could you forward this to Lorena? I'm going to mute myself again, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. Thanks for tuning in to our MAP grant application webinar. It is I, Lara Schrader, the soon-to-be not anymore interim coordinator of member services. Nicole will be back in May, so depending how the next month shakes down, you may be receiving your approval letters from Nicole or me. We're not sure yet. And also, Eden is here tonight, so just as a reference, we're just making sure that we got our bases covered. And at the end, if you had any questions for her, we can definitely get those in. We're going to spend, I'm not sure how long, as we need to take on MAP grants. I'm just adding one more person there. And of course, we will have some time dedicated to the adaptations of MAP grant for COVID. So since we're doing some stuff that's a little bit different than last year. So if you have any questions, since we're a small group, you can just unmute yourself and raise them or type them into the chat. I will make sure that I'm watching that as well. I will just find my chat. There we go. Perfect. Alrighty, so let's get started here. So this is the normal flow chart for how MAP normally works. Normally, we open the applications in March. We send a communication to you, which tells you what your initial approval amount is. Of course, that is to the member organization. So in VSA's case, in Saskatoon's case, in perhaps Lanigan's case, and in Capel Valley, there are several entities underneath, but the funding goes directly to the member organization for them to redistribute how they choose. It tells you the minimum amount that the population-based funding is available for the MO, and everybody initially is allocated that amount, based on their population. Then we host these webinars, which we are doing today and tomorrow, and then normally today would be the application deadline, but we have extended it 2 weeks since we were a little bit delayed in getting the information out. Jaime, I'm just gonna, do you have a question, Jaime? Nope. Just gonna mute you both. Then after that, you submit your application, so that'll be by May 1st. We will do the review. People who don't make an application, that money gets reallocated, and then people are told with the approval letters, those will still go out in early May, and then you know what projects have been approved and the amount that you have to spend. Then you can do your spending, do your projects, God willing, and we will still have the follow-up in September with the follow-up webinars later this year. The follow-ups are due September 30th, and then we do a bunch of legwork after that, do over submission, check everybody's projects, check everybody's receipts, reallocate all the final funding, make sure that everything is crossed off, and payment letters and checks are sent out near the end of the year. We aim for December 15th. So if you haven't yet, I would encourage you to crack open Section 11, Article 1, which is MAP grant policy. It's actually Article 2. Sorry, we've done an update that I didn't catch there. This typically, the bones of the policy are the same, but there are some changes that are made from year to year, and those are highlighted in there. So if you haven't yet read the MAP grant policy, make sure to do so. It's only to your benefit. And as well, we do have a MAP Easy Guide, which is on the website. Eden? Yes. Okay. We have people that are bouncing out and coming back in, so Maybe the calls are dropping, but you're still there. Okay. So just sorry, I saw Amanda and Josh are just rejoining us. Maybe the calls dropped for you. Just letting you know the policy is a good place to start, and the MAP Easy Guide. And particularly for the changes to the special project this year, we've added a lot of ideas to the MAP Easy Guide about types of projects that will qualify under each of the 12 categories. It's important to note that expenditures for other grant dollars cannot be requested with this grant. So you can't have the same thing doubling up in order to get twice the money. Of course, parts of this, if a different grant covers one element of your project that we don't cover and we cover a second part, that's totally fine. Okay, so of course we have two categories for MAP grant applications: the population-based funding and the special project funding. The population-based funding is designed to support program and operational enhancements in the 4 priority areas, which are on the next page. This category of funding is typically for projects or programs which occur on a yearly or ongoing basis. And then special projects are new or expanding projects that are designed to increase your organization's capacity. We'll talk a little bit more about each of those. So population-based funding areas, we classify into 4 categories: coaching development, grassroots and recreational development, organizational development, and referee development. Almost anything that we do can be classified into one of those 4 areas or possibly multiple areas. And if you are finding something that doesn't fall within one of these 4 categories, then there is a likelihood that it will not be approved. So some things to note about population-based funding. We would suggest applying for multiple projects in each category and more projects than you think that you might execute, or multiple things that you know you will execute in case something happens and you're not able to execute those projects. Later I'm going to say it, but I'll say it now as well, that funding only covers projects that have been approved on the application. And for that reason, we suggest you apply for multiple projects so that you have your bases covered. So in doing that, you articulate the project and the type of expenses under that project. So for example, a mentorship of coaches could be a project, and this type of project might have expenses as the master coach honorarium, printing coach handbooks, room rental if you are doing some sort of class training, and if you also decided to do a coach thank you barbecue, that is not eligible. So this is why we would need a breakout of what the types of expenses here would be. So now let's move into special project funding areas. So in previous years, we awarded any sum of money to one project that was typically a new project or something that hadn't been on the special project radar for 4 years. This year we have changed it. So these things align very strongly to the strategic plan and are areas that we are working on in our office, and of course we're hoping that you will align with and work with as well. So these are the 12 categories, and they cover a very wide range of things and have a lot of latitude within those things. For example, Indigenous engagement, there is a lot of interpretation about how you might do Indigenous engagement. So that leaves you to decide what will work best for you. So some things to note about special projects. The emphasis is on project development or expansion. So if you have, for example, an existing mini soccer program, this special project would be to expand that in some way. Otherwise, that wouldn't qualify as a special project. If you don't run a mini program and would like to start a mini program, this would be a project development. So I hope that delineation is clear for people. It's also important to note that this year we're going to try something different. So what we're going to do is we have left it open to the member organizations to choose the number of special projects that they would like to do according to their abilities, funding areas, priorities, that sort of thing. So if you would like to, you could submit one application in each category for as many categories as you want, up to $5,000 per project. So you could ask for, just to go back here, you could ask for a project, $5,000 for early sport participation. You could also ask for $5,000 for futsal program development or expansion. And perhaps if it's within your conditions of membership, you might be interested to start an adult program, and so you might ask for $5,000 there as well. If you don't want to ask for $5,000, that's okay. It's whatever amount is going to work and whatever projects are going to work for you. So if you decide you're going to apply for more than one special project, please submit a special project application form for each project. I would like to see, if you're going to apply for 2 special projects, 2 different categories, I would like to see 2 different special project forms. If you are going to submit more than one special project application, I also am requesting that you tell me which is your highest priority projects and specify your order of priority. And again, as mentioned, grant money that is received from other locales cannot be applied to the exact same expenses as in the special project. So in previous years, we have allocated a certain amount of funds, which changes from year to year. So let's just pretend last year we set aside $90,000 for special projects, and we received 3 times that request for special project funding. And so we have to make determinations about how we're going to allocate that funding, since there isn't enough money to go around. So we're hoping that if we prioritize projects, maybe we'll be able to pay out 2 of 3 or 2.5 of 3. I mean, best case scenario, we'd be able to pay all for everyone, but if that's not the case, this is what we're asking. Okay, so moving into some common mistakes. The most common mistake we see is that people do not apply. So on any given year, we have anywhere from 40 to 60% of member organizations who don't submit a MAP application. And that's just a shame to us. So we would like to see everyone apply for all population-based funding and special projects as well. The second common mistake we see is that people aren't applying for enough. Don't sell yourself short. Sometimes people can see a lot of money come back to them through the over-submission process, and we can only provide you the funding to the level of receipts that you provided us. So it does happen sometimes where we tap out and we could have paid you more, anywhere from $10 to $1,500 more, but because of how people applied and followed up, they were not able to maximize that funding. So a word about ineligible expenses. Ineligible expenses are straightforward and in the policy. Check the policy and contact us if you're unsure. There is some interpretation there. Sometimes we have to check with SASPort to make sure that it's something that they allow. But for the most part, if you are unclear, please contact us. Missing deadlines. The deadlines are firm, and they will be especially firm this year. Just with everything that's going on, we need to make sure that we stay on top of our paperwork in the office, and working through MAP is quite a large investment of time, and we want to make sure that we are getting funding out to you as quickly as possible. So deadlines will be firm, and other than our deadline this year of May 1st, the deadlines are the same every single year, April 15th, September 30th. So mark your calendars. Incomplete forms. So sometimes we get people that send us the receipts, but they don't provide a list of receipts, or they don't fill out the description about how the project went. We do not accept incomplete forms. So please make sure that everything is filled in prior to submitting. And the final common mistake we see is not asking for help. If you're in a pickle, we always say, please contact us well before the deadline to let us know. We can come up with a solution, but we are less likely to be able to find a solution if we aren't given a heads up and don't have an opportunity to discuss it proactively. So here's a list of ineligible expenses. So these are some pretty straightforward things. No construction projects, no maintenance or upgrading of facilities or fields, no cash prizes, no social events, no alcoholic beverages, no research projects, no out-of-province travel, no provincial team or CIS expenses, wages, debt repayment. Those are not eligible expenses according to the SASBORC regulations and us as well. And typically, general operating costs such as administrative costs, facility rental costs, and referee game fees for regular operations would not be approved, but we have changed that for this year, and we will touch on that further shortly. So we've made some adaptations due to the COVID world. The Rona has got us twisted right up, and so we're doing the best we can. So as we've had to make adjustments, we've changed the application deadline to May 1st. So if you would like, for your budgeting purposes or your planning purposes, you can submit your MAP applications by next Friday and receive advance approval for your population-based funding projects. So what that means is I will be able to approve the projects that you list or not, but I will not be able to tell you about the financial side and how much money we've approved you for, of course, until after May 1st, when everyone else has submitted as well. You don't have to submit early, but if you would like to, the option is available. We have made a decision that all member organizations, even if they do not have a season this year, electively or through force, will have the opportunity to apply for MAP funding, provided that they have completed their member renewal and that they do not have any outstanding accounts or fees or payments owing to us, even if they do not register anyone for this year. We have made this decision because in some cases people have already done purchasing in anticipation for the season. Some people will have costs that they cannot avoid. Some people may decide to try to run a season later this year, and it might not get off the ground. We can't predict the future. So we've made this available to everyone. And finally, if you're not sure whether you will be in fact holding a season at all, and you are only an outdoor member, my suggestion is apply. And you can always decide not to take your funding or submit a follow-up report at a later date. But of course, if you don't apply and you decide to run a season and need funding, you will be in a pickle. So some further adaptations due to COVID-19. So as I mentioned before, generally, general operating costs such as administrative costs, facility rental costs, and referee game fees would not be approved as an eligible expenditure. But this year, we feel that it is important to make that allowance because we appreciate that we're in a financially challenging time. So we did receive some questions after the initial letters went out about clarification here in this area. So I'm hoping that this provides some clarification. So some eligible expenses might be line paint, which is not something we would typically approve, printing costs, printer ink, office supplies, Paystone monthly fees, which we discussed last night on the call if you were around, and Eden could also discuss if you were not, facility rental costs for programs, referee game fees. These are all general operating costs that we will approve. What we won't approve due to recommendation and guidance from SASPORT is wages and staff costs. That does not mean honorariums. So if we're able to run a coaching course and you have a clinician, you can, an eligible expenditure is the honorarium for that clinician, but wages and permanent staff costs will not be eligible. And if there's anything that you're not sure about, we can talk about that on this call, or you can also just submit on your application with rationale about why it's important for you to, for us to approve those expenses, and we will consider this on a case-by-case basis. And some final adaptations. So, Doug, which section would the administrative costs fall under for the population-based application? Good question, Josh. Typically, those would fall under organizational development, but if, say, you were printing a bunch of coach handbooks, it could fall under coaching. It really doesn't matter. I guess it's just how you would classify it according to your operations. So Doug attended a call with SASPORT today about several topics. MAP was one of them, and they are continuing to provide feedback and consultation and discussion. And as well, the board will be meeting in the near future, and they will be discussing our delivery of MAP and seeing if they want to go even further than some of the things that I've discussed here tonight. So if there are additional updates or additional clarification, because some of these things we didn't think about until we had good questions raised by members, that clarification will be provided in approval letters in May. And we just also want to highlight that member organizations are eligible to submit their follow-up reports as soon as they have completed their projects, and they can request their final payment to be sent before December. In fact, if you submit your application and I approve you, and in a week after you submit your follow-up report, if you request your check, second week of May, we're able to cut that check for you. However, that does mean that you will forgo any potential funding that could be allocated during the oversubmission process. So you just have to be aware of that. But if that is a choice that you want to make, that is absolutely yours to make. Jaime, I see your question about administration costs. I'm just going to come back to that at the end. Okay, so some things to keep in mind in preparation for the follow-up. Keep track of your outcomes, specific numbers. If you're hosting a coaching course, we want to hear how many people attended, how many people are certified. If you host a school camp, we want to hear how many people participated. These sorts of outcomes are good specifics that we can show SASPORT when we complete follow-up with them about exactly what impact the funding had in our communities. Please ensure that you have proper receipts for all expenditures. The policy specifies what a proper receipt is very specifically, so that is a good thing to check out. And it is important to remember that all receipts must be from this calendar year 2020. They can be from January 1st, 2020, all the way until the follow-up deadline. As I mentioned previously, only projects that are on the application will be approved during the follow-up. So if it ends up that everything you've applied for, you're not going to be able to execute, but you did do something else, you are able to submit an amended application for approval a second time. But this application must be submitted prior to September 30th, which is the follow-up deadline. And we hope that doesn't mean that's going to show up on September 29th, but the deadline to resubmit your application is September 30th. So that is always in the policy. It has been for some time, but I just want to highlight that since that may be something we have to access this year. And lastly, please recognize task lotteries. This is a requirement of MAP grants, and without them, we would not have funding. This year, SAS Lotteries, if you are not aware, has done a rebrand and has a new refreshed logo. So when you go to promote them, I will include this in the application letters. Please use their new logo, which can be found on the SASPART website, but I will make sure to attach those things to the approval letters. And finally, personalized support. I'm able to offer tailored support to your member organization. I'm able to provide suggestions or advice, and of course, Nicole, and it is up to you to complete the process as your member organization sees fit. In previous years, if you have tuned in to this, there would also be a statement about that we will look over the application for you before the application deadline, if you'd like, or the follow-up deadline, and provide you some recommendations about how to strengthen that. We will not be doing that this year because we have changed the application for early approvals. But of course, I'm available to discuss with you before your submission. So with that, that is the end of the organized portion. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to tackle them. And I will just start with Jaime's question. What are administration costs? So just to go back to this slide. So administrative costs for us, so the specific phrasing here is general operating costs. So this would be anything that we would consider what it takes to run your organization from year to year, possibly printing, possibly a new computer, possibly maybe internet bills. I'm not sure. Those things would not typically be approvals, but this year we will consider them.
I couldn't pull up the receipt fast enough.
So that would include line paint, printing costs, printer ink, office supplies, Paystone monthly fees, facility rentals for programs, referee game fees.
Hey,
Jaime, if you need any clarification.
Jason, your mic is just unmuted. There you go.
I hit him. Does that make, yes, that makes sense? Okay, perfect. Thanks, Jaime. Does anyone have any other questions? Yeah, you're right. Jaime says pandemic problem. Yeah, that's certainly true.
So if there's no questions, I see Amanda just typed one in. I'm just going to speak about that Paystone for one quick second.
Sure.
So with what we communicated last night, for anyone that wasn't on the call, is that if their monthly fee, which is a $15 monthly fee for activating your online merchant account with Paystone, you can right now, if you're deciding to not receive any credit card payments or your account is going to be inactive for X months, you can have the payment reduced to $10 instead of the $15 while your account is inactive, and that monthly fee, either $15 or $10, will be eligible with MAP this year. Another thing that they did just post as well today, if you do sign into your RAMP registration account or check your emails that you received from RAMP about after 4 o'clock, you would have seen that they have now gotten rid of the additional transaction fees that were applied with processing refunds from credit cards, to credit cards through the RAMP system. So that communication will be also sending it out again on Friday, so everyone can, if you didn't see it on your ramp registration or you didn't get the email, we'll be able to clarify some of that information that came out today.
Perfect. Thank you, Eden. So Amanda asks, wages for summer program. So no, wages would qualify under regular wages because that would be an ongoing wage and not an honorarium. But if it was more of a one honorarium paid at the end of the season, that could qualify, Amanda. The difference really is if the sort of person would potentially qualify for benefits or vacation time, or is just making being paid in an ongoing manner. Those would be the differentiators between wages and honorariums, according to SASPort. Shenley asks, survey program like SurveyMonkey to survey membership. Would this be an eligible expense for PBS? Yes, it definitely would. You can put it in organizational development, certainly. Yeah, that's probably the most logical place. You probably, if you decided it was mostly for coach stuff, you could probably place it in coaching or what have you. But organizational development is probably the most sensible place to put it. TJ asks, will this presentation be available on SSA's website for us to go back to? Yes, I will post it probably tonight, actually. So it'll be on our YouTube page for sure. That's where we're putting all of our videos, and then we will link it appropriately. So I'll post it on the MAP website. And if if you have any questions between now and 12 p.m. tomorrow, you can tune in to tomorrow's webinar, which will be the exact same webinar, just with different people. So yes, TJ. You are welcome. Any other questions?
Yes, Amanda.
Monthly, just one sec. Monthly Zoom subscription fees. Yes, that absolutely can qualify, Amanda, under organizational development. It probably wouldn't qualify in a regular year, but for this year, for sure. So that can be an organizational development expense. Office rent, I would say that that would be considered an other item here on this page. So just submit that on your application with rationale and we'll consider it. And other costs such as that. I can't make a blanket statement about that, but we can consider that on a case-by-case basis. Was there somebody up here who had a question?
I believe Jaime's unmiked for a sec, or unmuted.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Jaime, go ahead.
Jaime, if you're talking, you might be muted.
I can't unmute him. Oh, now I did. Okay,
Hello?
there you go, Jaime.
Hello.
Here you
I'm
go.
sorry for my English bad.
That's okay.
If the government will decide, for example, no activity this year, or no in June, July, September, October, what is the solution about that? Because this is no good. This is not very good for us. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's not very good for us, and it's not really very good for any of the other sports. So that's
what happened with the
just
map?
the reality.
What happened with the map? Because
yeah, so that's a super question, and I'm not able to answer that question at the moment. That question was asked. Doug told me that question was asked of SASPort today because some sports will have no registration. Some will have very little registration. And of course, the way that we receive funding is also calculated through population and other factors. So that is something that we will keep in mind, and we will continue to monitor. But with I mean, we're a year out from next year's application still, so it's, I would say, too early to say, because maybe optimistically we're back in action in a month, and maybe at worst case scenario we lose the entire rest of this year. So it's a consideration that will be on the table, Jaime, and we will be waiting, I think, for the board and SASPORT to decide what their methods would be, and then depending on what SASPORT decides for them, we might make similar types of decisions.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, but I mean, the goal of MAP is to make sure that the funding is getting directly impacting the game locally. So that will always be the point of MAP, and we're just going to make sure that whatever happens for this year into next year, we'll be able to do that. Shenley asked, SSA player fees. If we run a player camp instead of a full season at no cost to players, can we use the SSA fees in the MAP grant under population-based player development? So normally this would not be something that we would approve. This isn't the intent of the policy, and that hasn't changed, but the goal is to support membership. So Shenley, I would say if you are interested to make that application, again, in this other item here, for consideration, you could make that request and provide rationale about why that's how you'd like to spend your MAP funding, and we'll consider that on a case-by-case basis. You are welcome. Oh, Jaime says nice work. Thank you. We do appreciate that. It has been quite the couple weeks, I'm sure, for all of you, just like us. So if there are any other questions, I'm happy to take them now. If there are not, I am happy to just press stop record. And if anyone just has any other questions about life, soccer life for Eden or myself, we can take those now too. Randy asks if VSA is sending coaches for training such as C license, can this be covered at special project or in coaching development? Randy, that could be in either place. So that could be coaching development, or for special project, I'll just go back here. Oops, that's the wrong direction. Here. So I would say for special project, it depends who is applying for the C license. So if those are youth coaches for who might be anywhere from 15 to 20 or 22 or so, you might apply for that under the youth leadership development. If those C license application or C license coaches are so that you can meet your club licensing, then you could apply for club licensing there. But then I would also suggest that if you have other club licensing expenses, you should lump those all in together. If that falls under Indigenous, girls and women, female coaches, or coaches who will work with specifically females, those are all places that you could put that C license. So it really just depends about what direction you want to take that and how your other application will come together. Josh asks, if we were going to submit normally ineligible expenses, can we lump sum them, or do we have to be specific in the amount for each category, such as 500 for all the things you've outlined? Do we have to outline a specific amount for line painting, office supplies? No, you don't. You could put $500 request for, and then list the items. And then we'll just call that good as a collection together. Perfect. Amanda, would field dividers qualify under new equipment to align with CSA grassroots standards in order to enhance the smaller game experience by reducing the amount of balls entering field of form from adjacent pitches? I don't see why not, Amanda. I think that's a safety element, so that could definitely fall under there. That would probably be something I want to check with Raheem from a technical perspective. Of course, we know that the grassroots standards have not been officially announced. I shouldn't record what I was going to say. So I would say you can definitely ask about that. Maybe you want to send me an email and just put that in the email, and I can check with Raheem before you finish your application. Josh, could you also briefly expand on what could be encompassed under club licensing participation for special project? Yes. So if club licensing obviously has a whole host of requirements, everything from coaching standards to safety to strategic plans to marketing plans, depending what level you're trying to pursue towards. Respect and support for parents, commit to kids. What am I missing? All sorts of stuff. So that would be in the pursuit. These would be the types of things that you're doing specifically for the pursuit of a club licensing standard. So of course, in this case, we would want it to align with the application that you're making this year, or planning to do down the line, but it really is meant to pursue club licensing standards and club licensing certification. I hope that clarifies, Josh. Okay, that's helpful. Great, thank you. Beautiful. Awesome, thank you for all the questions, people. I do appreciate that. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now.